Hello, this is Lafayette Faust. My main goal when I created Nevermore Hollows was to write and narrate scary stories that were fun and full of quirky characters who choose to stand against evil. This is where my passion is, and it still remains my main goal. However, as I was trying to find ways to add more content, I came across this idea to interview people who have had real paranormal experiences. I decided to call the series True Tales from Nevermore Hollows, and the first episode was very successful. Tonight, my good friend and Nevermore Hollows art director Chris Goins tells us a couple stories from when he was a deputy working at a haunted jail. The sound quality is a little different because we decided it would be fun and spookier if we drove down a dark road while he told his stories. So, with that, I invite you to sit back, turn on a light, and prepare yourself.
I got 3 days off. I'm going home. But yeah, it's now. You want to hear some good stories?
Yeah?
I know at the facility where I worked,
Yeah?
there for a while we had some encounters with things. An orb.
Ah.
I was a corrections officer in a facility that is called direct supervision. Okay. So it's one officer in the pod with the inmates.
Yeah?
And it was a Saturday morning, and it was cold, and we were understaffed. So my lieutenant said, "Hey, do your checks, and let's just let them sleep for a while. No worries." None of the inmates want to get up because it's cold.
Right.
So I was doing checks in 3 pods, and then another officer that I knew pretty well was working master control, which is security surveillance for the entire facility.
Okay.
So he could see cameras, he could see anywhere he wanted to. And he called me in one of the pods.
Okay.
So I answered the phone. I'm like, "What's up?" He said, "Dude, I just saw something down in the female pod." I said, "Well, then don't talk about it." He goes, No, man." He said there was a bright white light that came out of the medical pod on the top tier, went down the entire top tier,
Yeah?
came down the steps, and then went around and went through the door.
Okay.
And he goes, "What do I do?"
Now, was the door open or?
No, all these doors were closed.
Ah. Okay.
Males do not do checks in female pods.
Okay, gotcha.
The ladies had already done their checks, and they were dealing with the female inmates that cooked.
Okay.
And so I said, "Keep your mouth shut," because that's what I was told. We'd seen several things, and I was just told, "Keep your mouth shut."
Okay. So, can I interject a question?
Yeah, man.
Was this an old jail?
No, the facility's not very old.
Okay.
But I believe this. When you house evil,
Yeah.
evil will permeate the material that a building is made out of.
Okay. Basically, you're feeling, because we both believe that evil is a true entity and it manifests itself in many ways. So you're saying that the fact that there were so many bad people over the years in this place, that it somehow maybe haunted the bones, so to say, of the jail. Okay, gotcha.
Well, because every government building is built by the lowest bidder.
Right.
But this building is not that old, and it is starting to crumble. And I don't think it's from materials.
Okay.
I just think it's from the heaviness that it holds. And I'm not saying everybody in there is evil. I understand making mistakes. I understand sometimes some people just got to go to jail. But even as an officer, when I worked there, and I just worked there 5 years.
Yeah.
I dealt with at least two individuals that I knew in my heart were possessed.
Really?
Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
dealt with Odinists. I dealt with one guy said he was a shaman.
Okay.
I mean, all kinds of different stuff, and that little county facility actually held federal inmates, so there's people there from everywhere.
Okay.
And you know, I prayed for uh, God to cover me as I went in there. I have actually seen whole pods change um, the feeling in them. It was like it was almost hard to breathe.
Yeah.
And then I prayed, and not saying I'm no super Christian,
Uh-huh.
but just me saying, Lord, I'm asking for your favor over this.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just like whatever it was changed, and the air got lighter.
Well, if I can interject here, Chris,
Yeah.
I know that feeling you're talking about. I have been in situations because, as a young man, I was an investigator
Right.
and got into some hinky things from, on occasion where you can walk into a place and you feel that energy, that heaviness, you know, and I'm not talking just, haunting. Sometimes you can be around people that
Yeah.
are so dispossessed for or disposed to badness that you feel it radiating off of
Yeah.
them. So I can't imagine being in a facility where there's multiple people like that.
Well, I mean, I sat across the table and talked fishing with a guy who was a murderer.
Yeah.
I talked cars with a guy who was an enforcer for the Outlaws biker gang,
Okay.
who'd killed many men.
Yeah.
And we were talking about cars. It depends on how you treat people.
Yeah.
And corrections officers in the facility I was in, we didn't carry any weapons.
Right.
So your best weapon was your mouth and your brain.
Okay.
But one night, because I worked a middle shift.
So when you say your mouth and your brain, if I can, real quick, you're talking about just being smart and knowing how to talk to these people.
Yeah.
All right. Gotcha.
How to bullshit.
Yeah.
Pardon me. But that's a good lesson. But yeah, I worked a middle shift, so I worked for two different shifts. First shift started at 6 a.m., went to 6 p.m., and second shift started at 6 p.m. and went to 6 a.m.
Okay.
I worked 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Okay.
And so one night I was getting off. I'd locked my pod down. Everybody was good. Count was good. No worries.
Okay.
And I went to the sergeant's office. Lieutenant was in there, and a gentleman I knew very well. And we were just kind of shooting the bull for a minute, and he looks up on the monitor and he goes, "Who's in EPOD?" And I told him which officer was over EPOD. He goes, "Well, why is that inmate sitting at a table?" And I looked on the monitor, and you could see a guy sitting at the front table right in front of the TV, and from the lights were out the pod, but the glow from the television was illuminating this guy. I said, "Well, I'll go get him." He goes, "No, you're about to leave. I'll call somebody else." So I'm like, "Well, I'm going to sit tight for a minute." Because if a situation arises and they're going to need help, you help out your fellow officers.
Right. Yeah, of course.
So he calls two officers, go in there and put that inmate up. Well, they walk in there, and you can see them walk in, and they walk right up to the table, and they say nobody's there.
What?
But we can see on the monitor
Okay.
a guy sitting there.
Okay.
And the lieutenant and I looked at each other, and I said, "Have a good night. I'm out of here." And he goes, "Chicken?" I said, "Yes, sir. Very much so."
I don't mess with that.
But and then another officer worked in where the bad guys were.
Yeah.
This was where the worst of the worst were put.
Okay.
And these guys only get out 1 hour a day, and that's per regulations of Tennessee.
Okay.
And there was an inmate in there that had screwed up. He's a good old boy, but he just wasn't too bright. And he had been put in there because he beat a dude down.
Okay.
And he kept saying, and he told me this story, that when the officer would come by and do his hourly checks, something would come by behind him, like walking behind him.
Okay.
I'm like, what are you talking about? He said it looked like a blur, but it wasn't an officer.
So it wasn't necessarily a shadow person, like
No,
what
it was.
This was, and I've heard of these blur
Yeah.
creatures before. Okay.
And so we looked on the camera from the shift before us.
Yeah.
And the officer would come by and doing his checks, and behind him was all I can explain it as was a squiggly line.
Interesting.
Like somebody had taken a pencil and just squiggled a circle, and that's what it looked like. And it was this thing that was behind him. So the officer on my shift that worked in there, he brought in a little recorder and put it in the back medical pod.
Okay.
Where nobody was at. Nobody's housed in there at the time.
Right.
And he got talking. He got something yelling. We really couldn't make out what it was saying, but it was a man yelling.
Yeah.
But see, the vent system, because I know people are like, oh, they're talking to the vents.
Right.
This vent system had baffles and stuff in it. It wouldn't do that.
Okay.
The way it was set up, and the way the vents and stuff were positioned, you really can't talk through them.
Gotcha.
And that's one of the reasons why.
Right.
And so when we went to the powers that be, and just kind of said, "Hey, man, this is going on," we were told, "No, it didn't. Stop whatever we're doing." And that video of that thing following the officer disappeared.
Huh. Well, I believe that if you do get glimpses of something, on record, whether it be, video or audio, I do feel that, because my personal belief is that it is evil manifesting, I do believe that it can work whatever power it has to take away that evidence that you might have caught, whether it be audio or video.
Well, I believe the higher ups confiscated.
I see what you're saying. All right.
Because they didn't want any of that getting around.
Okay.
So I don't work there. I haven't worked there since 2013.
Yeah.
Most of the officers that I worked with don't work there anymore.
Okay.
Health reasons.
Okay.
For most of us.
Well, you had told me once before that while you worked there, you did not feel that you were in good health.
Oh, no. I weighed 450 pounds. I'm 150 pounds lighter now.
Yeah.
I almost died of a heart attack.
Now, you're claiming, though, if I can understand this, you're claiming that while you were there, whatever might have been going on in your personal health, while you were there, it was made worse because of the energy that you're talking about.
Well, that and just stress.
I got you. Yeah, having to deal with that.
You're dealing with dregs. For every good old boy that ain't just in there just because he's stupid, there's a couple guys in there that are just because that's where they want to be.
Yeah. And then, like you said, you have those in there that they're animals or worse.
Yeah.
They're I don't know. Some people don't believe in this, but I do. They're touched by darkness, if not possessed straight out.
Well, I worked in a pod for a solid week, and when I left there, I felt like that I'd been working outside doing construction. I mean, I was dead tired. I
Yeah.
mean, and it was hard to work in there. And then I went in there for the weekend, and it was different. And a guy came down from the upper tier,
Yeah.
and he was an Odinist.
Yes, I know. I've met a couple of those. Surprisingly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he goes, "You can tell the difference, can't you?" I said, "Yeah, what's going on?" He said, and he named 2 inmates. He said they went to prison last night.
Okay.
And I said, we just kind of looked at each other and went, "Uh huh."
So what he's saying is, when you walked in there, you felt
It was
a
lighter.
difference. Yeah, the energy in that place, and you didn't know, but the energy in that place was different.
Mm-hmm.
It's because these 2 individuals had been transferred out and took that darkness with them.
Because I'd been dealing with fights and everything. I mean, it was a hard pod to work that week.
Yeah.
And as soon as those 2 guys left, I worked there the whole weekend, and man, nobody bothered nobody. Everybody was fine.
So you're saying that without verbally trying to, work the other inmates up, just their energy would bleed over into the other inmates who already, it could be argued that they had less ability to, resist, doing bad things.
Right.
So that negative energy bled out into the other inmates.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, it's that whole thing, one bad apple can
Spoils
ruin
the whole damn bunch. Yeah.
Well, yeah. These guys, I don't know what it was with them. I dealt with both of them many times.
Yeah.
But it was, and I mean, for somebody who believes in Odin and prays to a Norse god,
Yeah.
to come down and and go, "Hey man, something's different,"
right.
That's evil. I think evil, can go across the whole spectrum of whatever you believe.
Right. No, I agree. Evil's evil.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, where you are, what entity you praise, and worship. Evil is evil.
Well, I had one dude. They called him Big Country, and he was a great big guy. He had "Game Over" tattooed on his knuckles.
Oh.
His fist was twice the size of mine. He was big. And I was doing a check in this pod, and he pecked on the window, and he pointed to the guy next to him, the cell next to him, which was a single man cell.
Right.
And there's this dude sitting in there on his bunk, just staring at the wall.
Okay.
Every once in a while, he'd raise his hand, like he was changing the channel on television.
Interesting.
So I went back to the other guy, and I'm like, "What the heck?" He goes, "He's watching TV." I said, "All right." So lucky me, I got that pod after lunch. Yay! So this gigantic guy who was watching TV in his cell when there's not one came up to me at my desk.
Okay.
And he was towering over me. I was actually considering which way I'm going to jump when he comes over the desk at me.
Right.
And he goes, "There's a guy that looks like you, but it's not you. And he's bothering me."
Oh my goodness.
I said, okay. He goes, and he sends his little man that's about 6 inches tall into my cell to mess with me. I said, "Okay, man." I said, "Hang tight, and I'm going to talk to my lieutenant, and we're going to try to get you somewhere where that guy can't bother you."
Okay.
He goes, "Okay."
So now you don't think he was acting and just trying to get...
No.
This guy was certifiably believing what he was saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he said, "Can I go in my cell?" I said, "Yes, you can." So I let him into his cell, and as soon as that door locked, I looked at the rest of them because they were already looking at me. Every man in that pod was staring at me, and I said, "Lock it down. I'm calling in help."
Right.
So I called my lieutenant, and I said, "Look, I just need a couple of guys. Come in here and help me with this guy. Do not come in here loud. We just need to move him."
Okay.
So they came in, and of course they were giving me a hard time. What, you can't do this by yourself, going? Until we went into his cell and he stood up, and then everybody went, okay.
Oh, yeah, we get it.
Yeah. And so I was like, hey, man, I said, I talked to my lieutenant, and I told him about the guy that's messing with you, and he didn't like that. So we're going to move you up to booking where it's quiet.
Okay.
And you don't have to worry about anybody messing with you. I said, problem is, according to our rules, I have to handcuff you to walk you up there.
Yeah.
Is that okay? He goes, yeah.
It
Put
kind
his
of gets
hands-
back to what you were saying earlier,
Mhm.
your mind and your mouth.
Because if we went in there like gangbusters, and
Yeah.
I said, then we're going,
Yeah, you
I don't
knew
know how long we'd have to fight it.
you thought it through. You're trying to meet him where he was,
Yeah.
and you were speaking his
I was
language.
speaking to him like a kid.
Right.
And so he let me handcuff him, and my cuffs barely fit on him.
So when he's telling you this about your doppelganger that's messing with him, and this little creature that's following your doppelganger around, did you sense any of that dark energy from him?
No, he was asking me for help.
Yeah.
And, you know, the guys in the pod were worried,
Yeah.
you know, and your main objective is to keep peace.
Yeah.
So that's what I was trying to do.
Okay.
And so, and I wanted to keep that big boy calm.
Of course.
Because there's strong and then there's crazy strong.
And there's a difference, yeah.
Is way worse.
For people who have never been in physical altercation, when I talk about crazy strong, I have gone up against big dudes before.
Yep.
And handled myself well. And then I've gone up against people that you would go, no way, this is a weakling, it's a pushover, but because of that dark energy and that craziness that they bring, they're more powerful than the big guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this dude was big on top of that.
Yeah.
And so we walked him up to booking. He was just as happy as he could be.
Yeah.
And we put him in a holding cell, and I believe he was sent to a mental facility.
Yeah.
But when I got back to my pod and got everybody out, I had several inmates come up to me and go, man, yeah, we didn't know what you was going to do. And I said, well, to be honest with you, I didn't either.
Right.
But, it's just one of those things where you got to learn how to do it. And there, like I said, I wasn't. I found out that job wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Just from the stress and just doing bad things to my body, and it was stressing out my family.
Right.
I found out later that it had messed with my daughter, and it's just I didn't like that.
Right.
It caused anxiety with my children and my wife. And I even said something, we were watching something last night on television. This guy was talking about, he was a police officer, and how hard it was. And I just flippantly, I said, was it hard? And Tammy, my wife, never missed a beat. She said, yes, very. Because there were times I called her at home, or on my way home, and said, hey, put some clothes on the back porch for me because I'm not wearing this uniform in. It needs to go straight into the washer because there's no telling what I've been into. So, yeah.
Yeah, so, and I've heard that a lot from other police officers. So this is a great story to end on. So, Chris, thank you for sharing these stories with me. And we're going to do this again. I like this. I like this content.
This was fun,
brother. So we're about to lose power anyway because we've been driving around recording this. But thank you for your time. I'm glad you're officially part of the Nevermore Hollow show.
Thanks for letting me tag along. I appreciate it.
Not a problem.